All right. So global warming has been an issue since I can remember, and my parents have always or everyone else I've ever came in contact with are always talking about what we can do to help save it or whatever. So I in my head, and most people I spoke to, global warming is a man-made thing, a cause. We cause it. Human beings. So when Joey came in here and said mankind has beneficial effects of the Earth natural cycle of climate change, I was kind of taken aback by this because I always thought it was us. I just never really cared enough to change it. So I researched it, and I'm refuting him. So I researched it, and I actually. His three main points were that the correlation between CO2 rising followed by temperature increase is absent, the current climate models are incorrect, and the effects of man-made emissions of greenhouse gas are negligible to Earth's atmosphere. So my main points are that CO2 rising has had a temperature increase. Current climate models are conducted by scientists who study global warming, so they're not incorrect. They're an estimate. And my last one is that the effects of man-made emissions of greenhouse gas are harmful to Earth's atmosphere. So my first point being that CO2 has had a temperature increase. My first point is that 75% of the 20th century increase in the atmospheric greenhouse gas CO2 is directly caused by human actions like burning fossil fuels. This was on climatechange.org, and it says that that CO2 levels were 389 parts per million as of April 2010, the highest they have been in the past 650,000 years. This increase in CO2 was a substantial contributor to the 1 degree Fahrenheit from 1 degree Fahrenheit to 1.4 degree Fahrenheit warming over the 20th century. My second point is that human greenhouse gas emissions, he says there isn't any change, but it shows that warming is occurring in the troposphere. Measurements in the upper atmosphere from 1779 to 2009 show the sun's energy has gone up and down in cycles, with no net increase. Warming has been increasing in the troposphere, so there has been an increase in temperature. And my second point is that current climate models are conducted by scientists who study global warming, and he said that they are incorrect. And I wouldn't choose the word incorrect, it's just an estimate. So they researched to make a generalization of what's gonna happen. And his example was just that, he just said that one of the models at IPCC had 2% success rate. That's the only example he gave, and he made a whole statement that all current climates are incorrect models. And then he also said that NASA satellites show that CO2 being released out of the atmosphere faster than global warming predicted. I don't know if that's necessarily something that harms it, because NASA actually is one of the many organizations, among others, such as the WMC, the ES, the Network of African Science Academies, the European Science Foundations, the European Space Agency. All these organizations believe human activity is a substantial cause of global climate change. So I don't know how true his statement about NASA can be. And then his other point is that past predictions of Earth's climate change are incorrect. I mean, I don't really think that's a good point, because just because past predictions are not correct doesn't mean that future predictions won't be. So, and then my third one is that that the effects of, he says that the effects of man-made emissions of greenhouse gas are not harmful to the Earth's atmosphere, and they are. He even states in his first point, he says doubling the CO2 in the atmosphere would only cause about a degree change in Fahrenheit. I mean, he's already contradicting himself there, because he's saying that it would cause 1 degree. He's just saying it's just minimal. Then my other points to prove that it's harmful, in climatechange.org, it said human produced greenhouse gases will continue to accumulate in the atmosphere, causing climate change because the Earth's forests, oceans, and other carbon sinks cannot adequately absorb them. As of 2009, the carbon sinks were only absorbing 50% of human-produced CO2. The other 50% is accumulating in the atmosphere. And he said Earth has a natural filtering system to get rid of methane, but this just shows that only 50% of that is absorbed by Earth. And my last point is that nearly all climate change studies show humans are the main cause, and studies which want to refute this are usually are often funded by oil companies, which already seems a little bit it's like a conflict of interest, because obviously they don't want people to think that they're the main cause of global warming. So, yeah. Yeah.
Do you have the one with the grade on it?
Yeah. Oh, no, I don't have that one.
Yeah,
The comments.
You have the one with the grade on it?
He probably has it.
No, he gave it to you.
Really?
No.
Did you give it to?
I should have, I gave out the copy that I gave was the final draft, not the original draft. I should still have the original draft with my comments on it.
You?
I think so.
I thought you handed it back.
What's that?
I thought you handed it back to everyone.
I handed it back to you. You turned it in with your final draft.
Oh my.
And we were short an outline, so I took the final draft and gave it to somebody, but I didn't give them the rough draft, I gave them only the final draft.
The one that has grade on it.
Well, there aren't any grades on anything yet, so, but the one that has my comments on it. I think I still have that.
Alright.
I don't have a copy of the final draft. That's what you were getting back from her, so you could give it to me, right? Is that what's going on?
Confused.
Dude, I need to
We'll talk about it after
create
you
a
come.
private Twitter so I can say all my controversial thoughts. And then question me on it. Well, I'm just so funny in real life. So. Yeah. Dina's hilarious with their typing crap on me and everything. It's like, what are you typing about?
So funny. Like, people will be like, oh, you're so funny on Twitter, but like, well, you're not funny.
All right, Jenny, let me just make a few comments here. Got a little sidetracked on issues. You ID the topic, you explain the general premise of the controversy and the position that you're coming from. I thought that you did an okay job trying to explain that you're going to be arguing counterclaims on most of the secondary issues that the advocate presented, so that's okay. The first point that you get to is the argument about whether or not there's been a change in temperature and whether or not it's accounted for by human activity. You've got one piece of information that suggests that there has been a change and that 75% of that change is a result of human activity. So that's pretty good, except how do we contrast that to the evidence that the advocate presented? It's like, well, here's a piece of information, here's a piece of information. I need a little bit more explanation about why I should trust the data that you're presenting over the data that the advocate presented. Because if I got two contradictory pieces of information, I have to make an assessment as to which one seems believable to me. Now, the one thing that I think that you do that helps that a little bit is arguing that there seems to be a large international community that supports this this premise, and so the widespread acceptance of these principles maybe would be a reason that we should accept that particular conclusion. The other issue that you mentioned is, that these are changes in the troposphere. Is that a different measurement than maybe the advocate is using? If that's a different measurement and it's a more accurate measurement of changes in global temperatures, I think you should explain that. But you just basically throw that piece of information in without telling me why it's relevant and how I ought to be utilizing that. And I think it might be important, but I'm not sure. And if I'm being asked to make a decision, that makes it problematic. It needs to be clearer for the listeners who are choosing. The second point that the advocate makes is that these theories are incorrect. Basically, it has to do with the models that are being presented. And there was criticism in the advocate's argument about particular models. You kind of come back and say, well, that's just one model. There's, like I said, we have this consensus that's going on here. And we're back to that point. Now, I don't know that all of them use different models, or whether they are premising their materials, their conclusions off of the same models, or if the models all work the same way. If they all work the same way and they have a fundamental flaw in them, then it doesn't matter whether or not it's the same model, because they're using the same data in order to reach that conclusion. And then I think the advocate's argument might be more acceptable. If there's a difference and you can explain how the models reach these conclusions and adjust for the flaw that the advocate is talking about, I think that would be a stronger argument. As it is, I just think you kind of summarize this idea that there are different ways of looking at the information without necessarily telling us why looking at it your way is the correct way to look at it. It got a little confusing because you get involved in this discussion about NASA's model and their estimates, but NASA's one of the groups that says that this is going on, and then there are a whole bunch of other groups, so we're kind of back to that consensus argument again. I do think that you try to make a conditional statement that the advocate presented into an internal inconsistency, and I'm not sure that that's a legitimate interpretation of the claim that the advocate made, so you might want to be a little bit careful about that. I don't think that means that you couldn't use that argument, but I do think that you want to use it in a different way, in essence, in suggesting, look, they acknowledge that it's a possibility, and they acknowledge that if it were true, that there would be change. So that inherently suggests that there is a relationship. That's, I think, the way you want to present that argument. The filtration issue that comes up toward the end, I didn't think it was very clearly explained by the advocate, and I think it needs to be more clearly explained by you if it's going to be an argument that we ought to consider. It sounds mostly like the general argument here is that the Earth has the ability to make adjustments to these kinds of things. And both sides seem to be agreeing that the Earth can make adjustments. The question are the adjustments significant enough to prevent some particular harm? And I didn't hear any information. At least I don't remember the information that Joey presented, but I didn't hear any information from the argument that you presented that suggested that it was insufficient to address that issue. So I think that needed to be a little bit stronger. All right, thank you.